you will, on diversity, equity, and inclusion. Of course, I pressed him that when I read Frederick Douglass's work and the works of W.E.B. Du Bois and the works of our other scholars, none of them used the term DEI. We've been fighting for our fair share of the American dream. As a result of our fights for our fair share, other groups have benefited. When we fight for ourselves in a democracy, when we change laws and when we change the Constitution in our democracy as African Americans, the rest of the world catches up because that is the nature of our system. Anyway, one of my closest and dearest friends over many, many years is Jerry Thomas. Jerry provides strategic leadership and counsel, the National Black MBA Association, for Nielsen, the National Baptist Convention of America, the National Association of Black Journalists, the University of the Virgin Islands, Bennett College, Cleveland State University, the Southern Christian Leadership Conference in Atlanta, the National Action Network in New York, the National Bar Association in Washington, D.C. He has provided strategic leadership for dozens of congressional campaigns, state election campaigns, state representative campaigns. He is an ombudsman who covers a myriad of issues. He represents municipalities. He's kind of like the consigliere, the guy we turn to for some advice. Jerry, how do we handle this issue? And Jerry offers us a historical analysis, a political analysis, and insight on what's next. Jerry Thomas, welcome to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show.
I want to say Congressman, because you're the last congressman I know who did things the way you did. I remember one time visiting an office you had in the ghetto of Chicago. And most people would think, wow, okay, typical congressman got a little office here. Man, you walk into this office on a downtrodden street. You go to the back of it, it's a war room. Every map, every aspect of politics in Chicago, monitors. I'm saying, my goodness, I've never seen anything like this. And I've covered a lot of campaigns as a journalist, and I provided political strategy for a lot of people. I had never seen anything like it. I was blown away. But then I stepped back and I said, you know what? I shouldn't be surprised by this, because I remember when Jesse Jr., when he was not a congressman, but Jesse Jr., when he was serving in a capacity with his father, the Rainbow Push Coalition, and you would go to the third floor of the Rainbow Push Coalition where very few people ventured. Most people didn't know there was a third floor. And you would go up there, and this guy had mapped out the whole movement of the Rainbow Push Coalition, understanding the 50 states, understanding every angle, every cranny we had to go to. And mind you, it was so far, it was so innovative and so advanced that really most people didn't even know how to manage that. That's how far advanced Jesse Jr. was. So nothing surprised me of where he was going when he finally had some access to capital and some more brain power to really realize his vision. So, you know, I'm proud of the fact that you're back. You're back in a public capacity where you can share your insights to many of us who have to figure out, where do we go from here?
Jerry, we have about 1 minute before we go to the break, and then we come forward. Yesterday, our very special guest on the program was Mark Morial. I want you to give some thought, when we do have the balance of our time after the break, to the question, what kind of strategic advice and leadership counsel would you give to the National Urban League, to the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, to the Rainbow Push Coalition, to the National Action Network, In this era of resistance, President Morial did a fantastic job yesterday for half of our show. But I'm very interested in the guy behind the scenes who's always in their ears saying, listen, we need to counter this. We need to be prepared to counter this. We need to strategically move and carefully move in a direction that doesn't jackknife our truck, but indeed provides our people with the kind of visionary leadership that they understand that we need during these perilous times. I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. You're listening to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show. When we come forward, one of the nation's great chief strategists, Jerry Thomas of Jerry Thomas Public Relations.
It's afternoon drive time with Jesse Jackson Jr. Only on KBLA Talk 1580.
I have a dream today.
From slavery and segregation to the Great Migration to our present day rising, the Black experience in America is a story of resilience, achievement, and unstoppable spirit. This February, we're curating amazing conversations celebrating the heroes, the pioneers, and the everyday people who made history. Black History Month on KBLA Talk 1580. Together, we carry the torch forward.
What you want to do, huh?
KBLA Talk 1580 is thrilled to share that we have been named as a semi-finalist for the coveted American Climate Leadership Awards, honoring our climate work last year. We're also delighted to announce year 2 of our Climate Justice Crusade. This year's $2 million 12-month campaign will link and combat the relationship between climate change and poor health outcomes for African Americans and the poor. Climate inequities have taken a toll with multiple health triggers in the Black community, such as extreme heat and poor air quality, made worse by the recent wildfires. Our work to ensure climate justice and climate equity continues. In the coming weeks and months, you'll be hearing a lot more about our 2025 climate campaign. To learn more about our plans for this year and the companies and organizations supporting us, log on to our website at kbla1580.com. Caring about the climate, caring about the community, changing the conversation. At KBLA Talk 1580, we've got your Black.
1 in 3 children born today will get diabetes. This sad prediction by the Centers for Disease Control will come true if millions of Americans don't improve their lifestyles, especially by changing what they eat, how much they eat, and how active they are every day. Every 23 seconds, another American gets diabetes. Stop diabetes before it starts. To learn more, contact the American Diabetes Association or download our free diabetes education programs at learningaboutdiabetes.org.
Now back to more of Jesse Jackson Jr. on KBLA Talk 1580.
I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. Welcome back to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show. My very special guest is Jerry Thomas, Chief Strategist of Jerry Thomas Public Relations. When I think of Jerry's name, I think of Delmarie Cobb. I think of Ron Lester. I think of Cornell Belcher. I think of Van Jones. I think of the best and brightest political consultants in the nation who have advocated our cause. Jerry, welcome back to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show.
Thank you, Congressman.
Jerry, if you had to give some advice to the National Urban League, to the NAACP, to the National Action Network, to the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, and the Black Lives Matter movement, what strategic advice would you give them in the era of Donald Trump?
I remember a period in the 1990s, might have been the mid-1990s. It might have been after the riot of Rodney King out there in LA. I can't exactly remember the exact date. But there was a summit And this wasn't a summit meant for publicity at that point. This was a summit because Black leaders of all these organizations had recognized that they had to pull their brain power together. And this was a period when undoubtedly the two most powerful Black people in America was Louis Farrakhan and Reverend Jesse Jackson. There was no apology about that. So there was a summit, and it was questions of could Farrakhan be in the same room with Reverend Jackson? And it's not because they didn't get along, because, you know, they live blocks apart from each other in Chicago. And when they had to put their minds together, they figured out a way to do it. But there was so much controversy about leadership that could you get these A-listers in the room with everybody else? And that included, you know, the NAACP, it included, which had a 64-member board. And for some reason, hard to get anything done back in them days. You had an urban league that was questioning, you know, how the Black community was questioning how much could they really do when they were financed so much by major white corporations. So there's a lot of different forces trying to come in that room, but it managed to happen. I think we got to do that again in 2025. We got to just get in a room. But I think the benefits that we have in 2025 that we didn't have in 1994, 1995, whenever that period was, is that now we can control our own message. Disseminating that message, we don't have to depend on the New York Times or the Boston Globe or the Washington Post or USA Today or CNN to tell our message. We can control our message now because we have so many people that are influencers that if you get it in their hand, they can influence so many people. I think we got to have a summit. And I think we have to come up with an agenda because right now everybody's not on the same page. It's pretty disappointing that when you say the NAACP, you have to question if you live in Chicago, if you live in Dallas, or if you are in Phoenix, does that represent the same influence that an NAACP represent between Richmond and New York? That's where they're very powerful at. NAACP doesn't hold that much influence in Chicago. It's disappointing to say that, but that's not, it doesn't have the strength it had in the 1990s in Chicago. And so we've got to revitalize these organizations. And I think the time is to do that. Maybe the NAACP has to do more to strengthen its core in Chicago and to strengthen its core in some of these major metropolis where there's a large percentage of African Americans that are transitioning from these once powerful urban corridors to all over the South where we just don't have the impact in the North and the Midwest anymore. These cities just don't carry the same power base that they did back in those days. So we got to have a summit where we kind of lay everything on the table and come up with a strategy. Because
let's be honest. I didn't mean to cut you off, but you talked about, let's say, for example, in a state like Pennsylvania, where you have, you know, a Black enclave in Philadelphia, you have Pittsburgh, but you also have Erie County. And we'd like to think, given where our votes are vested in national elections, that Pennsylvania is a swing state. But it's a swing state because of Blacks in those cities. That's what makes it a swing state. In Chicago, Illinois, this is a red state, but for Chicago. Detroit, Michigan, but for Detroit, Michigan is a red state. So when you talk about strengthening these organizations in the cities, it really does mean, Jerry, that a lot of local work has to be done.
Definitely a lot of work has to be done. Let me take it a step further.
Please.
In all of those cities, you have, you would know this, you represented a district where most of the power base of people going to vote was not in the city, was outside the city. We're talking about the southern part of Cook County, people who would probably vote. Most people don't think of it. They think most of it is just in the city of Chicago, but you had a strong voting bloc in the southern part of the county of Cook County. Well, what I've found out lately is that the pockets where Blacks migrated to from the cities in the 80s and 90s when they started to move away from Chicago and spread their wings to the south suburbs, the western suburbs, where they thought it was utopia, where they thought they were finding better school systems and they would get better housing and better living conditions. Well, a lot of those communities now, those communities of 30,000, 40,000, 20,000, they're suffering. They're having problems with voter apathy because they're not seeing the impact of anything that has preserved their investments over the past 40 years. They're paying higher taxes, but their schools are crumbling, just like the inner city. Their governments are not able to deliver at the highest level. In fact, there are some communities you can't even get people to run for the village board or the village trustees or the board of education. There's a community called Maywood of about 30,000 located just maybe 10 miles west of Chicago. They could not find one person to run for the school board, and 60% of at one point, it was a majority Black school district. Now that school district is 6% Hispanic because they can't get Blacks active in the school system.
Wow.
We're experiencing some major shifts politically in these major areas that were strong Black holes, and we got to put our heads together, meaning our leaders, to figure out what we're going to do here, because the Democratic Party is going to be in trouble if we don't figure this out.
When I think about California and I think about African Americans and Hispanics in Los Angeles, when I think about San Francisco, when I think about Oakland, California, and I heard some fairly astounding numbers about Oakland, California, and the regentrification of the city and the exodus of African Americans from Oakland. When I think that the reason the state of Georgia is nearly a blue state, it's tied to a city and one or two counties within the state that are primarily responsible for Raphael Warnock and Ossoff's elections in the state. And then we look at some of the schemes that the states themselves have engaged in to disenfranchise voters. I am equally as concerned about our consciousness in these areas and just how fragile the coalition is going forward. Your thoughts, Jerry?
What I'm seeing is a major division between the old guard of political leaders, political strategies, and this young guard. There's a lack of trust here somewhere. When you try to get some of these established leaders at the table with these young leaders, there's a lack of trust. It might be a lack of patience from the young people and a lack of allegiance to anything other than their agenda. In the old days, you were fighting for all kind of causes. Yeah, we know the vote was before us. We know economic empowerment was before us. We knew integration was before us. But now everybody has a different agenda. And when they fight, they don't seem to fight for all causes. So I think you got a lack of trust there. So what we're seeing is that the collar counties and collar areas that you're finding, most of those people moving in those areas are young professionals who, again, have been a little bit detached from the political movement. And they got young people who are advising them, but they're only advising them in certain, it can be police brutality. It could be gender issues. It can be, it's not, we don't seem like we're on the same page with all of these issues. And we don't even trust the strategies of how they're galvanizing the votes because they're not all at the table. So I think it's going back to your original question. We've got to have a summit where we got all these forces together in the room, and then we come out with an agenda. And I think the time now is better than ever. It's better than it's been probably in the last 50 years.
Well, the climate might be right for a summit, but who can convene such a summit, Jerry? You mentioned earlier that you're concerned that there is no Farrakhan, there is no Jesse Jackson. We do have, I think, tremendous leadership in Mark Morial and Reverend Al Sharpton and Derek Johnson. But do they have the gravitas, the Black Lives Matter movement, those influences to come together at the same place in the same time and accomplish a grand strategy that can move our community forward?
I think if they had that opportunity, they just lost it. I think with the last administration, they were on the A list of invitees to be at the table with the people who were making some decisions. They had that opportunity with Obama. But I think right now the slate is clean. It's a shakeup on the football field. We new players are ready to emerge now because they know it's a different game now with Trump in office.
Jerry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but when I think about 1984, 1988, and I think about Dad bringing forward Ron Brown, and these guys became players after Reverend's campaign in every facet of the Democratic Party, at the state level, at the local level, certainly at the DNC. And I think about the $1 billion that Kamala Harris raised, right? I think about, she ran a campaign in all 50 states. She ran a campaign of hope, of joy, and all of that stuff. But then even though she was unsuccessful, I don't see Kamala Harris engaging that which she did win. She did win the Democratic Party. My father won the Democratic Party, and he stayed engaged with the Democratic Party. And I share your concern that it looks like a free-for-all right now, with us ceding the power that we earned, even in a short campaign, to the forces within the Democratic Party that have not always represented our interests.
I don't know how much I can share in this segment, but I will give you an example of a sad development. 2 years ago, I led a campaign for Black contractors in Cleveland, Ohio. And the issue was around the Sherman-Williams Company, which is number 163 on the Fortune 500 list. They're considered the father of Cleveland. They have more power in that community than anybody. Well, Sherman-Williams decided that he wanted to build his new headquarters in Cleveland. And Cleveland at that time was the poorest city in the nation. It flips-flopped every year between big cities. Cleveland one year, Detroit the next year. This year happened to be Cleveland's year. 51% of the population in Cleveland is African American. But almost 70% of the people in Cleveland are living in poverty. So here you have $1 billion project getting off the ground in Cleveland, and Sherman-Williams decided to name its 9 partners. And when they named their 9 partners, all of their 9 partners for building this structure in Cleveland, where 50% of the money would come from the tax base with incentives and tax breaks, Sherman-Williams then named 1 Black partner. Poorest city in America, 51% Black. Black congressman, Marshall Fudge, Department of Housing, Black mayor. You would think Cleveland could get some clout for a Black contractor. We had to fight, meaning we had to advocate. I held several rallies in Cleveland. Sharpton came in. We tried to get Morial in, but we brought in his local Cleveland branch. Reverend Jackson came in. Everybody advocated because it was right. They decided that they were going to bring in a Black partner, but when it came time to figuring out how much they were going to pay this partner, it wasn't enough money. It was peanuts, because you're talking about $1 billion project, and they want to give a contractor that they say will be a partner like about $2 million versus others getting 50, 100 million. You're making big money when you do this because you're managing other projects. We could not get a partner there. We tried. Then we had the mayor of that community who decided to leave the movement and negotiate with Sherman-Williams, saying, hey, I got your back, Mr. President of Sherman-Williams. We won't let you down. We could not get a Black contractor on their project. It just shows you no matter what we have clout or we got power, when it comes to economic power, it is still very difficult to get an African-American at the top. We're in trouble.
I was on our call yesterday as we prepared to come forward. I had Mayor Mark Morial, who shared with us what it meant to run a big event like the Super Bowl. And he said, all of this occurs on the front side. Minority participation, African-American participation, women-owned businesses, inclusiveness of the LGBTQ, inclusiveness of Black preachers and churches and businesses in the city. These things must be confirmed and worked out on the front side, and that is the nature of the partnership. Mark Morial was a strong mayor in New Orleans. A lot of our mayors would would learn a lot to have listened to yesterday's conversation about someone not only who did it as mayor, but also ended up running one of the nation's oldest civil rights organizations. I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. You're listening to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show. When we come forward, Jerry Thomas, the chief strategist of Jerry Thomas Public Relations, and I guess you can already tell one of the smartest men operating between many of our organizations and helping chart a new path forward.
I'm Amber Payton with 4 Things You Should Know with BIN News. Ramon Berry, a black man who lost his home in California's Eaton fire, is suing Hilton for racial profiling. He says security harassed him twice during his free stay, claiming he was not a guest, despite hotel staff confirming otherwise. Chicago's Finance Committee has delayed a $1.25 million settlement for a black man, Dexter Reed's family, amid opposition. Reed was killed by police in March of 2024. Days before the Department of Justice dropped his case, Black New York City Mayor Eric Adams reportedly told top officials not to criticize President Trump or interfere with immigration enforcement. At a City Hall meeting, he urged them to, quote, trust him, end quote, to protect federal grants as Trump threatened funding over New York City's sanctuary status. And the University of North Carolina, Asheville has dropped DEI course requirements after President Trump's executive order rolling back DEI initiatives. I'm Amber Payton on the Black Information Network, your home for Black News First.
The Crohn's and Colitis Foundation has been at the forefront of inflammatory bowel disease research and care for over 50 years. Learn more about research, education, and support at Crohn'sColitisFoundation.org.
This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
The undefeated UCLA women's basketball team remains the #1 team in the country in this week's Associated Press Top 25 poll. UCLA is 23-0, 11-0 in the Big Ten Conference. The top 4 after UCLA, Notre Dame, Texas, South Carolina, and LSU. USC moved up from 7 to 6. USC is 21-2, 11-1 in the Big Ten. The Trojans are at home Thursday night against UCLA. Before making his debut with the Lakers Monday night, Luka Doncic made a $500,000 donation to relief efforts for victims of the wildfires in LA County. For HBCU alumni in the LA area, circle this date on your calendar, Saturday, October 25th. That's the day for the premiere of the Las Vegas HBCU Classic, a pretty good football matchup between Grambling and Jackson State at Allegiant Stadium, home of the NFL Las Vegas Raiders. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson on KBLA Talk 1580.
This is KBLA Talk 1580. Talk radio. That's music to your ears. We're unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
Hi, I'm Zoe Williams, a.k.a. the Voice of Reason, encouraging you to join me weekdays from 7 to 9 p.m. for the world's most intriguing relationship radio roundtable. Every night, I facilitate and encourage our loyal listeners to participate in the most engaging relationship discussions you'll hear anywhere. So make it a point to rendezvous with me, Zoe Williams, the Voice of Reason, Monday through Friday, 7 to 9 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. Trust me, your relationships will never be the same. The VOR is on fire tonight.
Unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580. We've got your black.
You can do it all by yourself, baby girl. What's your name? Let me talk to you. Let me buy you a drink.
Spilled your drink? Quick, the quicker picker-upper. Bounty picks up spills quicker, and each sheet is 2 times more absorbent, so you can use less than the leading ordinary brand. So you can get back to your night. Bounty, the quicker picker-upper.
Fabric Talk. Hello, my love. I am your living room carpet. I see everything. I feel everything. After a while, I smell like everything, including Sir Pickles, who you snuggle with while binging that dating show you can't stop watching. So, how about we freshen things up with Febreze Fabric Spray? Oh, and a big spray for my pals, couch and ottoman. Ah, yes, refreshing. Breathe happy, Fabrice. La 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 la.
Wow, it's you, the Capital One Bank guy.
That's what they call me.
Mind if I get a selfie?
Yeah, sure thing. Say no fees or minimums on your Capital One checking account.
Wow, that's a keeper. So, where are you heading?
I'm off to spread the good news that Capital One helps people keep more money in their wallet with no overdraft fees.
Oh, you're the best Capital One Bank guy.
Hey, mind if I get a selfie?
Sure.
Say, Capital One, what's in your wallet?
Terms apply. See CapitalOne.com/bank for details. Capital One NA, member FDIC.
You're listening to Jesse Jackson Jr. on KBLA Talk 1580.
I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. Welcome to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show. My very special guest is one of the nation's leading political consultants and chief strategist, Jerry Thomas. Jerry, welcome back to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show.
Thank you, sir.
Jerry, let me shift.
I want to revisit a question you asked earlier.
Please do. And then I want to shift gears to the farm team. You know, these young cats.
Okay.
These young men and women.
I'm going to surprise you here because this wasn't discussed. You asked me a question. You said, who do you think can convene leaders to a summit? Wow. And I'm just listening to you. You say you just had Mark Mariel on. You say I've had Reverend Al Sharpton, Action Network on. You've got all these power brokers that are coming on the show. I think Congressman Jesse Jackson Jr. need to call this summit. I think you have the forum now. You have a radio show. I think you're back. I really think you have the ear of a lot of these national leaders. I think you've been through the struggle politically. You've been through the struggle personally, that I think you've earned credibility at every aspect of Black American culture to pull people together. And I think a good place for such a summit would be Chicago because it's midway. And I'm just thinking, as a strategist, you told me to think. I'm thinking. And I believe the best time to do this would be right around Juneteenth. I'll give you 4 months to pull this off.
Oh, wow. So thank you, Jerry, for this, for your confidence.
People need to know they're free. They need to know, hey, they're free.
I would love to attend such a summit. Pulling it off is another situation. But let me just share with you, the reason I came back to radio is there are two owners of two radio stations whose leadership is particularly impressive to me in this very perilous hour in African American history. Mel Spann at WVON in Chicago, she's open to the idea of using her platform for the purposes of galvanizing a national conversation. And none other than at KBLA in Los Angeles, Tavis Smiley, whose reputation in every state within the union, I believe, matters to the idea of a national and international summit. As you know, these summits can be very, very perilous just in terms of how we interact with each other. And there's a lot of groundwork that has to be laid. And my two bosses, I think, are the best. They're the only reason I do this, because my voice, I feel, is protected in the context of the ability to speak and to project what I believe, what we share, what we manage to accomplish together matters. Now, with that said, I'm also impressed with those two young cats out of Tennessee who stood up for the gun victims in their state and got thrown out of the legislature with that white lady, and they accepted her back but threw the brothers out, and then the people sent them back to the legislature. I'm impressed with a sister out of Ohio. Her name escapes me, but she was doing such a great job in the state Senate They dropped a case on her. I want Donald Trump. I don't care who it is. I want her pardoned because we need her voice. I'm impressed with some of the leaders, many of the leaders in the Black Lives Matter movement, both at the local and the national level. But I'm also impressed with the influencer community that, you know, has followers. They have people that are engaged, but they themselves operate on these little islands that are disconnected from the history of how we got to where we are. We weren't, as Kamala Harris said, we didn't just drop out of a coconut tree. We're part of roots. We're part of an orientation, which is my disappointment, by the way, with the Harris campaign and with Kamala at this hour. I mean, enough sulking. You had an infrastructure and an organization no different than Jesse Jackson's, no different than Barack Obama's, and that infrastructure matters to the ongoing future of the Democratic Party, or it makes a rightward shift as candidates begin to run for office, not only taking advantage of black votes, but they'll also say, hey, but I got to give a wink and a nod to the MAGA crowd within my district. And therefore, when they get elected to public office, whether at the state or the federal level, they start making uncertain sounds. So this farm team, let's talk about the farm team for a minute. What are you seeing out here in terms of fresh new faces? I got it. Nancy Pelosi, Jim Clyburn. Oh my goodness, Chuck Schumer one more time. I mean, how about out to pasture? How about the National Museum of History? Some of them need to be placed in, and give these young people a chance.
I'm seeing some very spirited, some very engaged, some innovative young people who are penetrating at some of these local levels, who are doing a great job in their small little pockets. I think they need to connect the dots, though, with some of the established leaders so they could be, so they can grab the baton. I just don't think, let's just go back a little bit. Are there leaders like that were created in the 1950s, like a Martin Luther King Jr., who got an opportunity to lead a movement? Are there leaders like
26 years old, by the way?
Yeah. Are there
26
leaders like,
years old in Birmingham and Montgomery? 26.
No doubt. And let's go back a little further. I mean, let's look at Jesse Jackson, a theological student who's up in Chicago, sent by Dr. King to run Operation Breadbasket.
28 years old at the hour of Dr. King's assassination.
And just fought
when he's 26 years old. These are young people. Stokely Carmichael, and I'm sorry.
But what I'm saying is that what those guys had that I fear these young people don't have, I think we've given our young people a sense of entitlement. They feel that, hey, yeah, you know, I've worked in the trenches a little bit. I got the great credentials, and you know, it's my time. No, those guys took the mantle. You know, they didn't wait. I mean, Jesse Jackson came into Chicago, launched a successful campaign boycotting against AP, and that means AP was a supermarket for those who might not know, protesting against the Jewel Tea Company, which was now Jewel Osco, a major company, protesting against Pepsi and demanding that you put blacks in your store, you hire them, it's reciprocal trading agreement, you put our products on the shelves, and you do business with our companies. And that it happened. We've got to demand at that level, especially now. It's not going to be given. So those leaders got to emerge, and they've got to command respect in this new modern era. They're not doing that. That's not happening. We saw that with Black Lives Matter movement when they start taking the street. But what has happened to that movement where we're able to take it to the next level? We're seeing some of it move into the political process, but it's not a continuity of strategy that keeps it moving, and we need that. Otherwise, if it was happening, we wouldn't have lost 210,000 people in Chicago in the last 15 years. It's just, we can't afford this. We got to have a leader step up, and they've got to take the mantle. They can't wait.
Let me just add that I also am greatly challenged by the idea that, you know, someone has to get killed. The police have to shoot somebody in the back They got to put their foot on the neck before we start thinking about what do we do, one, protest, but number two, what the follow-up is after that. I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. You're listening to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show. Our very special guest is Chief Strategist of Jerry Thomas Public Relations, Jerry Thomas, when we come forward.
To speak on the news of the day. You're listening to Jesse Jackson Jr. only on KBLA Talk 1580.
We asked seniors how to prevent Medicare scams.
My best advice, if you get a phone call, do not talk to the person. These people are well trained. Don't talk to them.
They don't know me. They're just trying to scam me.
Don't be fooled. Hang up.
Just hang up.
Never give out your Medicare number.
They're going to get your number to put in a false claim.
If I get a call from someone, I don't pick up the phone. And should I pick up the phone and they ask for information, then I hang up.
How do you detect Medicare fraud?
Just like I check my credit card statements, I check my Medicare statements monthly.
Scammers can get a hold of your number, order medical devices through your account, and you're not even going to know about it if you don't look at your statement.
Check your statement every month. If you get your statement and you see something that you know you did not have done, you report it.
Call your senior Medicare Patrol.
To report Medicare fraud, call the Senior Medicare Patrol at 855-613-7080.
At Charmin, we heard you shouldn't talk about going to the bathroom in public, so we decided to sing about it.
Light a candle, pour some wine. Grab a roll, the soft kind for a little me time. Charmin Ultra Soft Smooth Tear. Wavy edges for my rear. So let the softness caress your soul. Just relax, you're on a roll. Let her rip. Charmin Ultra Soft Smooth Tear.
Charmin Ultra Soft Smooth Tear has the same softness you love, now with wavy edges that tear better than the leading one-ply brand. Enjoy the go with Charmin.
It's been said that when someone you love has Parkinson's, you have Parkinson's.
The Parkinson's Foundation knows that the disease doesn't just affect the diagnosed. It affects everyone who supports and helps care for them.
If you have questions, the Parkinson's Foundation has answers.
We can help you understand the disease
and give you tips for living a better life.
Find your answers at parkinson.org or call 1-800-473-4636. The Parkinson's Foundation. Better lives together.
I have a dream today.
The road to freedom wasn't paved with just big moments. It was built day to day, step by step, voice by voice. This February, experience Black History Month through the stories that shaped Los Angeles and beyond. KBLA Talk 1580. Where Black history lives.
They can do anything they want to us. We might not be back. I might be in jail. I might be anywhere. But when I leave, you can remember I said with the last words on my lips. Now I am a revolutionary.
On Saturday, February 22nd, you are invited to A Night with the Panthers, a special fundraiser dedicated to supporting Black Panther veterans who now require assistance with essential needs such as medicine, food, and housing. These Black Panther veterans championed human rights, fed the hungry, educated the community, and stood as powerful symbols of resistance and resilience. Despite their incredible sacrifices, loving and serving the people did not come with retirement plans or financial security. So, now it's our time to honor their legacy and ensure that they are cared for with the dignity they deserve. You can help by attending and supporting A Night with the Panthers, Saturday, February 22nd, 6:30 p.m. to 10 p.m. at the Project 43 Team Post Center, 6841 Crenshaw Boulevard, Los Angeles. For more information, contact Black Panther Party Breakfast at gmail.com or call 707-554-2784. That's Black Panther Party Breakfast at gmail.com or call 707-554-2784. This is a community call to action from KBLA Talk 1580. At KBLA Talk 1580, we've got your black.
After you use Bounce Dryer sheets and realize how fresh, soft, less wrinkled, and less staticky your laundry can be, you'll every time. Like those socks that smell like they've been through a marathon. Or that blanket that's got wrinkles on its wrinkles. Maybe even your chatty coworker who keeps distracting you. Okay, Bounce Dryer sheets can't do it all. But for fresher, softer, better laundry,
Now back to more of Jesse Jackson Jr. on KBLA Talk 1580.
I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. Welcome back to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show. My very special guest is Jerry Thomas. Jerry, in our final segment, welcome back.
Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Jerry, there was a very loud minority in this past election cycle. Black Republicans who were fed up with Democrats. In barber shops, we've heard the conversations. The press couldn't help but put microphones in front of many of our brothers and sisters who were fed up with a political party that wasn't delivering for them, right? And then, but they never told us that to vote for Donald Trump could mean the end of Black History Month. They never shared with us that they're not going to teach the Tuskegee Airmen to military cadet students at the Pentagon or in any of the military academies, which I understand has now been restored. No one could have ever imagined that the Department of Education, founded in 1979, which sends federal grants to cities to close the gaps between poor schools and poorer school districts adversely impacted by property tax funding because there's no businesses in those communities to share the burden with local homeowners. They never shared with us that the election of Donald Trump was the margin of difference in us losing the very way of life that Martin Luther King Jr. and others have fought for since Brown versus the Board of Education. These brothers and sisters right now are quiet as church mice. I mean, I can't find them. Man, I had a Negro friend of mine on the phone. I called him to find out what's going on. He had me holding on for an hour and a half. And I said, man, I don't think the brother's coming back. So what do we have to do to welcome these sheep back into the fold? Because we have real problems now.
I'll be honest. I want to dismiss that because they were misguided. They are undereducated. And I think, again, we got to start back. We're now starting back at first base. I'm going to go back to where I grew up. I grew up in Newark, New Jersey, right outside New York City. 15 miles. You take one train to get you right downtown Manhattan. And it was nothing like for a Black American to get to New York because that was the whole world. You living in Newark, it's like living in Gary. But you get to New York, you saw everything in New York.
Don't say Gary. We've got a producer who'll jump right in here when you say Gary.
But hey, Newark was like a Gary's. And I think I mentioned that before we got on the air. Listen, we're talking about Richard Hatchett. We're talking about Ken Gibson. We're talking about the Stokes out of Cleveland. Man, these were the power bases. I'm not picking on Gary. This was the future of Black America. Mm-hmm. And look what happened to all those cities. Newark, Gary, Cleveland, they're struggling. They got the political power, but they didn't get the economic power. Now, let's go back to this. Dr. King, before he died and was trying to kick off the Poor People's Campaign, he told Harry Belafonte, I made one mistake. I brought my people into a burning house and they can't get out of. That means we're focused on, integration. We're focused on political power, but we just can't survive with that. And we are seeing it right now. All the years of political clout, we still haven't delivered the people to the promised land. We're looking at, and I mean, doing great works, but we still are suffering economically. I think this has got to be the era where we are focused on economic development. And I don't think we have to depend on anyone but ourselves to do it. Like I said, I grew up in Newark, New Jersey. It was probably, and I had an opportunity because I grew up in Newark, New Jersey, and it was so bad, I had an opportunity to go to Alabama for a few years because my father was from Alabama. And I saw racism at its ugliest core. I mean, it was the third grade down there before I integrated into a school where there was a white person in my classroom. So prior to everything, before that year, everything was Black. Then I came back to Newark. Everything was Black. I could go a whole day without seeing a white person in Newark. That's how life was. But guess what? My father had businesses. He had apartment buildings. The people I knew had businesses. They were entrepreneurs doing their thing. We were surviving. You couldn't tell us we were poor. We weren't poor. We weren't rich. But, we we got through. We did what we needed to do. If we wanted to buy some $100 shoes in high school, we knew where to go. We had the money paid for it. But we made our living off the backs of Black people who patronize with our businesses. I think we've got to go back to that era of where we learn how to build up our community where it would be embraced by others. Now, I hate to disappoint you because I'm working in all communities. I do public relations for Hispanic communities. And I have seen how the immigrant community has come in here in this city in about 20 years. And I have seen quietly how their money has moved from just contracting to just doing custodial work to being chefs and people in the kitchen to building homes, living together, purchasing homes, moving from Chicago to Elmwood Park, to Melrose Park, to Elmwood. Some are even making it to Oak Brook. Man, things are changing. And we got to figure out what's the ingredients to this, because the jobs are there. Why are people not getting them? Because I'm looking at right now, the construction industry is saying we need 500,000 people a month to fill our jobs. Why Black people are not getting those jobs, I have no clue. So we got to have that summit so we can figure these things out. It's just no way our people should be underemployed, and there's no way our communities should not be advancing. This is an economic issue now. We've got some political power. We got Black mayor. We got Black congressmen. We got Blacks in Springfield. There's just no excuses. We've got to figure out this economic picture to move our community forward. And if we don't learn how to come together under Trump, I'm concerned of what it means, in the next 4 years. By 2030, this could be a scary situation.
Jerry, thank you. Thank you very much for that analysis. And I love the way you painted the picture for what's happening in the immigrant communities. What is it, Jerry, from your perspective? We got about 2.5 minutes before the end of this segment. What is it that we as Black people, from your perspective, are not doing?
We've learned not to. It's funny. I got a text with somebody listening to your show. I did not let them know. And they like your show and they like what I've said so far. Just a nice text from somebody. Well, we've got to have a summit because we've got to bring everybody to the table. You got brothers working at every level trying to make things happen. You got women making things happen at every level. We just got to come in. It can't be in one day. One day we just come in and drop what our concerns are. Then we come back another day and figure out how we move on some of these things. We've got some serious issues here of what needs to be done right away to revitalize our communities. Because at one point, Chatham was a beautiful South Side community. At one point, Pill Hill was something people were proud of. Our southern suburbs were places we moved for a better life. A lot of these communities are struggling right now. They're having financial challenges, even with their governments. We got to figure out how we fix this problem and how we make it happen politically and economically. We got to make sure that companies that really come in our community are really providing us with the opportunities, with our expertise to make a difference. I am really interested to see how Blacks really fare with the Super Bowl. Jerry. I don't want to hear just some small contracts. I'm really interested in how Black companies really succeeded during the Super Bowl. I think that can be interesting to find out one day.
So this is what I heard very quickly. We need a national summit. There's no doubt about that. I'd like to see Tavis Smiley and Mel and others take up the call. But I also think we're talking about 100 or maybe 200 or maybe even 1,000 local summits where local business comes together with cities to determine the path forward. I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. You've been listening to the great Jerry Thomas, Chief Strategist of Jerry Thomas Public Relations. You're listening to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show. Until tomorrow.
KBLA 1580 Santa Monica.
I'm Amber Payton with 4 Things You Should Know with BIN News. Ramon Berry, a Black man who lost